All right. Well, the Silicon Avatar. Yeah, this episode is one of those that it got emotional, but for a lot of people who watched the episode, the emotional beats missed because they felt that, well, it's a classic case of what would I have done in this situation? And that is something that would make this an incredibly fun to tinker with in a TTRPG because of the fact that Picard made certain choices. What was her name again? Dr. Marr made certain choices. What choices would you make if you were in those situations? Although, to be fair, having the players act as the crew of the ship and not the, guest star or captain would kind of recontextualize all of the decisions. But still, at any rate, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So, Silicon Avatar is the episode where we see the Crystalline Entity for the second time, which is the giant space-based life form that Riker once referred to as a giant snowflake, because it's literally bigger than the Enterprise. Anyways, so what it does is that it flies around the galaxy and somehow eats the biospheres of planets. And in most cases, when it does so, there is very little left of the planet's biosphere. It just devours everything. Which, kind of devastating when it literally strips every living thing off of a planet and just completely kills the entire planet's biosphere. But the other thing is that in the first episode with the crystalline entity, it was established that the crystalline entity did have some level of decision making ability. It wasn't just a fig that flew around and zapped anything that moved. It did have the ability to be communicated with on some level because, as we see in the first episode with it, Lord actually knew how to communicate with it. And in this episode, they figure out that they can communicate with it with focused graviton pulses. Well, Dr. Marr eventually uses that to shatter the crystalline entity by starting a stream of focused graviton pulses as if she's communicating with it, then just cranking up the decibels until the focused graviton pulses are too powerful for the entity to be able to withstand. They actually put into the episode as it aired this moment where the the entity realizes what's going on and tries to escape, but isn't able to get away fast enough and just now it is established in the second episode that the entity doesn't actually have the ability to literally murder everything because there are ways to block its abilities. One of those is that rocks infused with certain bits of exotic ores would actually block its scans, and certain kinds of force field technology also blocked it. Oh, and apparently in lower decks, they went with the idea that it wasn't actually a unique life form. That is actually one of those things that was always a question in the original airings of these. It's like, is that literally the only one of its kind that exists anywhere in the universe, or are there more of them? So, if you were to use this, you could make it a lot smaller. You could have a smaller one that the players are able to catch or just kill it. I don't know, whatever. It's up to them. But the idea of having a crystalline entity as a sort of pet or some sort of weird ally, I mean, is it a good plan? Well, it's definitely a plan. Because, as noted in the write up here, Picard actually went to a lot of time and effort to try and figure out how to negotiate with the Silicon Avatar. And that is actually one of the things about the episode that gets really, really interesting. It is not at any point ever explained as to whether or not the crystalline entity is actually aware of the fact that it's killing people. At no point do we ever see anything from its point of view in the first or the second episodes to use it, and it was a minor throwaway line in this lower decks episode, so it's not exactly explored there either. And that's something you could have a lot of fun with as a TTRPG game master. What does the crystalline entity actually think about Star Trek or Starfleet? We don't know. There's another interesting thing with it is that presumably the crystalline entity that Picard encountered was operating in the distant verges of Federation space, and places that were very rarely visited by pretty much anyone. Which, again, part of the reason why Sung built his base on that one planet. It was out in the boondocks. Then it gets erased by the crystalline entity. And oh no, but well, anyways, so in this episode, it has an interesting plot hook. See, there is a planet called Milona 4, and Riker and a handful of others from the ship are talking to the facility administrator, Carmen Davila, about, setting up a Federation colony on the planet. While they're talking, the crystalline entity shows up and does its thing where it's like, oh yeah, this planet looks tasty. Yum. Yeah. After things got eradicated. Huh. Didn't have a picture here of the before thing. That's unfortunate. Well, this is what the planet looked like before the crystalline entity zapped things. And here we have it afterwards. Yeah, nasty stuff. See, one of the uh, good things about this is that Crusher and Riker were able to escape by hiding in the cave. And most of the colonists managed to uh, hide in the cave with them because, quite frankly, it was an early advanced scouting party and not actually a developed colony. Although I have to say, this is something that I suspect would be something that the Federation would consider a valid location for extra potent terraforming efforts because, well, we know that it used to be a really nice planet. So, other than the lack of a functional biosphere, it you just have to, replace the biosphere and call it good, right? Noteworthy is that this says 2368 was when it got attacked by the crystalline entity. 10 years later, it is listed as a Federation member. Hmm, that's something you could use as a plot hook. It's like, let's look at this world and see how it is in the aftermath of the devastating erasure of the entire planet's biosphere. Okay, caveat. It wouldn't actually be literally the entire biosphere, I suppose, because this is a planet that had naturally occurring caves that the crystalline entity couldn't penetrate. So, there's like a handful of things left. Yeah, yeah, it got trashed. Anyway, though, but yeah, it's like dealing with the crystalline entity, trying to prevent the crystalline entity from eating the biospheres of entire planets. Well, you know what? That is a task for your players. And honestly, this is an episode where there, other than the plot devices to do things related to the crystalline entity and the choices to make, it's all about the choices when you do it in a TTRPG because this is one of the episodes that had high stakes. Like, if you try to handle the crystalline entity and screw it up, it's entirely possible that no one will ever find your ship's logbook. If it wipes out your ship's entire crew, your ship might never be found. It might end up crashing on the planet, and the crash might leave behind so little wreckage that no one will ever figure out why you crashed into the planet. Yeah, that is an episode premise that has stakes out the wazoo. Melona 4 getting wiped out by the crystalline entity. Tragic, but it's a small scale tragedy. Because when you look at the crystalline entity's history, and this is actually one of those things where it gets back to that question where does it actually know that there are people living on these planets? Well, it seems as though, at least on multiple occasions, the crystalline entity may have been avoiding inhabited systems. Why it is avoiding inhabited systems is a question. Because the planet Sung was on didn't have, orbital installations because Sung was hiding there. So, but lore asked the crystalline entity to wipe out the colony on on Sung's planet. Yeah. Oh, also the crystalline entity, when it's moving around, it can go at warp speed. One question about this that you could have fun with as a game master: how long can the crystalline entity travel at warp speed before it needs to recharge? And if it can't eat the biosphere of a planet because there aren't any close enough, how would it recharge? That's a fun thing you could put in because, distracting the crystalline entity, getting it to be too tired to keep fighting, and then just leaving it adrift, seemingly dead in space. Interesting idea. My, you could actually use that as an alternate way of getting rid of the thing, instead of smashing it to bits. Boy. But yeah, it's like, what is the largest population of any of the planets that was wiped out by it? I'm not sure. I don't think they actually went into much detail, but the article here says thousands, not millions or billions, just thousands. Which again suggests that while it did attack inhabited planets sometimes, the colonies on those were relatively small. I mean, again, Melona 4 wasn't really an inhabited planet. There were people on the planet, but it's just a survey mission, not a colony. Um, let's see. Omicron Theta was one of the ones. That actually did have a proper colony on it. Not sure how many people were living on the colony though. Actually, let's take a quick look. Omicron Theta. Okay, 411. So that's a few hundred deaths. Uh, oh yeah. Anyways, so yeah, several different colonies that had a few hundred or a thousand or two. Yeah, that's all that actually got documented that the thing did. Of course, this gets into another question. How old is that thing? How many? Because that thing is huge. How long has it existed? Where did it come from? Yeah, those are things you could have fun tinkering with answers to. Because let's face it, no answers exist in the source material. Oh yeah. Also, Lore was apparently able to communicate with the entity using subspace radio. It's entirely possible it is able to, in some way, do both. We don't really understand how either one of them work. Hmm. Oh yeah. Also, okay, this is actually more um detailed than I was expecting. Is that here it mentions that the entities can absorb radiation from nebulas. That's an alternate food source to eating biospheres. Hmm, interesting. Mm-mm. Okay, well, that is something that you could also ponder because, the whole negotiating with the crystalline entity thing. Getting it to avoid inhabited planets seems like one of the most obvious things you would want to do. And yeah, mm, that's about it, honestly. Mm. The crystalline entity was one of the most big threats that they'd ever thrown in, but it's not a threat with a proper face. It's this sci-fi monster that is a genuine monster. and throwing it at your players would be mean and potentially fun. Well, I guess I'm going to leave it there. This is a really, really big, deadly snowflake. And that's the number one thing to keep in mind if you try to use this thing. It is deadly. Well, see you guys later.